Now I'm going to turn it over to one of our stellar board members whose name I just said, Seth Knievel. He has been the chair of this event, has put it together and made it all happen. He's a current PhD student at LSU, and I'm going to give it to him. Thank you.
Hello. You might have heard my name is Seth Knievel. I'm very excited that you guys came here tonight to see Dallas LGBTQ Leaders in the Making, the latest installment in our Outrageous Oral Panel series. I'm elated to be here for two reasons. The first is being up here on stage is one of the only chances I get to feel like the tallest person in the room. More importantly, however, this panel punctuates the long history of collaborative organizing that has set Dallas apart for decades. You know, when I first joined the Dallas Way, I asked why we call it that, and what I learned is that Dallas has a refined approach to activism. We've always worked together to achieve a myriad of goals that benefit the entire community. Instead of being competitive, we're collaborative. Instead of being combative, we're compassionate. We understand that a rising tide raises all ships. And that is what has set Dallas apart from other queer communities, and that is the Dallas Way. And so it may be no surprise that this culture of compassion and collaboration has been passed down from generation to generation. Indeed, many of our elder gay, lesbian, and transgender activists have taken younger community members under their wing. I think of Carl Parker, somebody who's one of my greatest mentors and almost like a father figure to me, because he brought me into the game where I got to meet so many of you with incredible stories, insightful advice, and inspiring souls. And so, it is no secret that this experience is not unique to me. Many of the young leaders in the community look to their mentors right now for guidance. And this is just in time. With the rise of transphobic and homophobic rhetoric, the encroachment on our rights at behest of the state, and the erasure of our voices, we find ourselves at a particularly precarious moment in our history. And it is our history that will inform how we respond. You see, many speakers today are the ones now carrying the baton in the human relay race for our rights. And I know that we're ready for that because of our mentors who prepared us, but I also know we can't do that alone. You see, I invite you now to look around the room and notice the breadth of positionalities, of personalities, and of potentiality gathered in this room right now. The only way forward is for us to empower each other and ourselves to build relationships and share space beyond differences in culture, in gender, and in generation. We're going to do that because that's how we do it in Dallas. And so, without further ado, I look forward now to transferring over to Javier Enriquez, who is the president of the Dallas Social Queer Organization.
Cool, I get to do whatever I want. My name is Javier Enriquez. I am the president of the Dallas Social Queer Organization. I would say my story, a good place to start is go Diamond, go Diamond, go Diamond. I was part of a MLM family, not Men Loving Men, that was later. But my family thought that to get out of poverty, we needed to be on the diamond level with Quickstar. And we sold copious amounts of frozen beef. We had bought an extra refrigerator, and no one wanted to buy from us. But my parents were on the grind because there were 8 of us that they had to feed. I am a first generation student. I'm a first generation American. My dad is from Mexico. And I'm thankful to call Oak Cliff my home. Anyone else from Oak Cliff here? Hell yeah, yeah. My fellow street thugs I see. I'm born and raised in Oak Cliff. I'm right by Mountain View College. I was there when gunshots were multiple a week. And now there's only like one and it's better, but I love Oak Cliff so much. Growing up there and growing up in the circumstances that I had, it taught me a lot. I remember that growing up, my first language was Spanish, and I had a little bit of a lisp, not a lisp, sorry, an accent. Maybe there's a little lisp here now though. But I wanted to fit in so bad. I wanted to be as American as possible because I saw the way my family was treated, how my family, people who looked like my family were being represented in the media, and all we wanted to do was have an opportunity to thrive. And I remember that myself and my siblings were taken to go take tours of mansions in the fancy parts of Dallas. And my parents would take us there and they would say, go pick up your room and start thinking about what you want it to look like. And we would run around and be like, oh my gosh, like that's where I would be, and that's where like I would push you down the stairs and this and that and whatever. We never got a mansion, but my parents really inspired me to dream. And I'm so thankful. And as I grew up, as I came to know who I was, the parents that I loved very dearly didn't really love aspects of who I was. And I already knew that aspects of who I was not going to be accepted in the community that I was living in. And when they found out, they did not take it super well. I was sent to a religious camp. I was sent into therapy with the efforts of conversion. I was banned to not have any technology or see my friends. And the worst part of the time is whenever I came back from that religious camp, they got rid of my dog. They wanted to take away any kind of influence that they thought would turn me gay. I don't know what my dog did, but yeah, I mean, shout out to her. But it was a really isolating time, and I think that's something that we can all connect on as LGBTQ plus people, is that we've all had this time of feeling othered, questioning whether or not we belong. And I remember that whenever I came out, it was 2 days before summer, and everything that I worked up for, because I was a shy kid, and that year I was like, you know what, I'm gonna like straight iron my hair, I'm gonna be a punk, and I'm gonna be so cool. I got friends, but before I could capitalize it, it was all taken away from me. And I remember how isolating that felt, and I remember when I got back to school, I was so thankful to have teachers and friends who supported me and loved me nonetheless. And it was this school that believed in me enough to make me student body president and to invest in me. And it was something I'd never really felt before. And when I left school, I wanted to continue having community because all my friends were going out of state, and I tried going to Chicago for a semester, but it got really expensive. My parents could only pay for a semester. And so when I got back, I tried to find community, and it was very hard. I tried to come out to the Strip, and I would get intimidated because I would see these really dashing white people, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm just this little brown guy, I don't know if I'm gonna fit in. And I remember there was twice I came to the Strip, I parked my car, and I didn't get out. Because I felt even in my own community, I didn't belong. These are things I told myself, but these are also things that I was told by media that I digested, by messages that I received, that me as a queer person of color, I wasn't afforded the same kind of luxuries. And so it took me a minute to find community, and I started by going to Fuse. If you don't know what Fuse is, this is a program at the Resource Center where they support cultivating community for gay men. And I remember I went there and I took my chosen sister at the time, she's trans, and I took Jose, and we went there and we had a great time, but we were told that unfortunately this is a space that is designed for men. And I couldn't bring my sister in. She was the person I felt the safest around, and so I didn't go back. And I understand, no shade to the Resource Center, that's what their mission was, but that really stuck with me. And I really wanted to get into an opportunity where I can reshift community to be for everyone. And so I ended up working at the Resource Center. I ended up working for Fuse. And I tried to make it as welcoming as possible. And we did amazing things. We had more trans representation come into the spaces. And then we were defunded. And I lost my job. And all this work that we built was gone. And it's still affecting us here today. You've seen funds not be there anymore for our community and for the nonprofit agencies. And I was tired of just having these opportunities be taken. And so you're like, you know what? I'm going to do something about it. And myself and my friends got together, and what we wanted to do was to create a community where we can unite the L, the G, the B, the D, the Q, the plus, all the other alphabet. We wanted to come together to create something to bring us together. I've been in Dallas all of my life, and unfortunately, I've seen a lot of silos, and I've seen a lot of competition, and not nearly enough coalition. And it was a little infuriating, and even when I tried to develop partnerships with people, they'd be like, okay, we want to part with you, but we don't really care for this kind of organization. And it felt like there was legacy beef that had nothing to do with anyone still existing, but we had to follow these like unspoken rules, and I was really tired of it, and I think most people were tired of it. And so we wanted to just say, fuck all the rules, we're gonna create our space, we wanna work with everyone, we wanna be an org's org and support everyone because this is a hard time. And so we created the Dallas Social Queer Organization to do that. We believe that community building is a means to address mental health outcomes. And if I had opportunities to be in organizations like I'm running now, that I could have been an even better place. And I would not have to have endured as much as I did. And I've learned a lot from that. Disco is also entirely volunteer driven. We do 6 to 8 events a month. And it's ran by a lot of queer audacity, to be honest with you. We used to do 16 events, but we were not well at the time. And so we quickly learned about the concept of burnout and stretching ourselves too thin. And I was also able to learn about the incredible people who are also actively trying to create a welcoming community here in Dallas. I have so many mentors here in Dallas. I see one of them over there, DR Hansen with Sinna Wild. I think of Juan Contreras from TX with No Pride. I think of all of these organizations who, despite all of these unspoken rules, were just carving their own path. And I wanted to do that, and I wanted to do that in a way to unite people. And I think we've only been doing this for 3 years, but I do think that we've done a hella good job in the short amount of time. Thank you. Our average event attendance is around 40 people, and that's a lot, especially that we are currently leaning towards a younger audience right now. But there is such a yearning for people to not only find community, but to find people who are different from themselves. Especially during a time where the L and the G and the B are trying to distance themselves from the T. We need more opportunities to really unify us in the face of all this political adversity. I should also mention I come from an activist background. Before disco, I spent a few years running an organization called the Sunrise Movement Dallas. We were operating on trying to save the planet and to mitigate the effects of the climate crisis and to really advocate for things. And one of the last things that I did with them was we marched from New Orleans to Houston over the time span of 40 days in the summer of 2020 something. And we did a whole march. We were advocating that the government carry on its promises to these frontline communities. And we did a lot of work, and not a lot came from it. And so it was really defeating. But what I've learned from that moment is, while that march ended, there is a bigger march always going. And that along the way, you are going to meet people, you're going to create partnerships and collaborations with folks that will get you closer. And even if something failed, at least there was an attempt, and at least we learned something. I've learned so much in such a short amount of time. I don't have a career out of the work that I do, but I'm so thankful to be having an opportunity to help create and usher in a new generation of leaders and queer people into Dallas. And honestly, I feel like people are now following the pace of young people in Dallas. I'm seeing more and more of that. I'm seeing less competition. I'm seeing more of unification. And it's so inspiring, and it keeps me going on what I'm trying to achieve. And at the end of the day, I know that even if I'm not there right now, even if we are not right there right now, that one day soon, we will go diamond. I appreciate y'all.
So thank you so much, Javier. We're now going to introduce Chris Walker, the Communication Engagement Manager and National Consultant with Prosperity Bound. I think I got that wrong. Bounding Prosperity.
It's okay. Thank you. Hey, how y'all doing today? Y'all all right? Now, y'all made a lot of noise because typically when I do that, I have to ask people to do it again. So I know you all are up and lively, okay? So my name is Chris. Some people call me Dr. Do Good. But first, before I tell you a bit about who I am, what I do, and how I got here, I want to do an exercise. Can we do an exercise together? Is that all right? Yeah. So I want you all to repeat after me, okay? So I want you to say, listen. Listen. Empathy. Empathy. Accountability. Accountability. Determination. Determination. So I'm a PK. That means I'm a preacher's kid. I was raised in the church. And so my dad was really, really big on acronyms. So I grew up having an acronym for everything. So when I think about outrageously oral, and when I think about emerging leaders, I have to think about, well, what could I do to give the people something that I wanted them to take on? And I said, what better than to give them an acronym for LEAD? So throughout my story, and throughout me telling you more about my work, I want you to think about listening. I want you to think about empathy, accountability, and determination. So, picture it, Sicily, 1962. All right, more like Memphis, 1994. This amazing bundle of joy comes into the world. I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee. I was born to two teenage parents in a city that tells you you're not supposed to be anything. You can't make it out. If you're born here, you don't leave here. And so growing up, it was me, my mom, and my dad, and I kind of quintessentially had to raise myself, right? My parents had to work, odd job just to keep the lights on, but they always had a hyper focus on me. They could not afford to send me to the best schools in the city, but what my mom did was that she would research what school had the teacher of the year, and she made sure that she would find an apartment in that district to make sure that I could be in that teacher's class. And so growing up, I always knew I was a bit different and I wasn't like everybody else. In kindergarten, when everybody else wanted to take a nap, I was up singing Amazing Grace. And if you can't tell, everybody I meet is my friend, all right? But in that, there was always something that told me that I was unlike the other children and I was a bit different. And it wasn't until I got into my mid-20s when I started to realize what the purpose was behind that, but we'll get there. So, growing up, I always had these feelings that I was told that I was meant to suppress based off of who I chose to worship at the time, or based off my family's cultural values. I was raised in a household that told me men don't cry, and that I should grow up to have a wife, and I should grow up to get a job and not go to school and to work. And if I wanted to be gay, HIV was going to be a part of my story. And so, being told these things, it became ingrained to me that if I was somebody who was going to identify as a queer man, eventually HIV was also going to be a part of my narrative. And so my story starts with me really trying to find myself and engaging in risky behaviors and activities as I'm trying to survive, to really find my own identity because my environment and my community like that. There was no one around me that I could talk to There was no one that I could see that represented me, and because of that, I did certain things that I probably had no business doing in order to feel and find safety. And to make a long story short, I always excelled at academics, and I was an athlete. Also, I told you, I came from nothing. So my mama told me, boy, if you want to go to school, you have to figure out how you're going to go to school for yourself, because I can't pay for you to go. And so my pathway to going to school was track and field. So I ran track from middle school all the way through college, and I managed to get a scholarship to the University of Memphis. And so when I got to the University of Memphis, it was the first time in a long time where I was by myself, and I felt like I had everything that I needed, and I was safe enough to explore my identity and to find who I was. And everything was well. I wanted to go to school to be a plastic surgeon because I wanted to make people pretty. I wanted to do the Botox and the fillers and the rhinoplasties and the boob jobs and the BBLs, and a part of me still wants to do it now, and I just might make it happen. But the universe had other plans for me. In March of 2017, I went out to a party, and I met someone at the party, and this person bought me a drink. The last thing that I remember is that the next day I woke up in a Motel 6. Shocked and a bit afraid. With a headache, I didn't know what happened. I had to use the phone in the room to call my roommate at the time to pick me up. And on the ride home, I remember us trying to recount the night before, but I couldn't. And so my friend was like, well, friend, you woke up in a room and you was by yourself and you was new, so you might want to go see what's going on. And I put it in the back of my mind. I ain't think about it too much. And then around 2.5 weeks later, I got sick. I felt like I was having the flu. I called my mama, and I remember it was the week before the first outdoor track meet of my senior season. And she convinced me to go to the nurse on campus. And so I went to the nurse on campus, and we went through all the procedural things, took my blood pressure, my temperature, my weight, and I expressed to her in that moment what had happened, and she said, you know what? When was the last time that you've been tested? And I told her, I said, you know, I've never been tested before. What's that? Because I was raised in a household to where we weren't allowed to talk about sex, we didn't have these conversations around HIV. And what I knew about sex was what was being happening to me, because I was doing things that I felt like I needed to do as a 16 to 17-year-old boy just to survive. I didn't know any better. And so when the moment she tested me, she came back into the room, and I still remember the expression on her face. And she said, well, I got something to tell you. I said, what? She said, the test came back positive. You have HIV. And she said, how are you doing? I wasn't shocked, transparently. And she left the room to get the physician, and what I did was I left. And did not go back. And for about the next 3 to 4 months throughout my senior year, I put the information that she told me in the back of my head. I tried to think of it as something that did not exist. I tried to go on with life as if that was not a part of my life. I tried to compartmentalize what was happening to me because I didn't want to face that reality that my dad had told me years ago. Well, son, if you gonna like boys, you better be ready to have AIDS. Because I was living that story. And so I went through a slight depression. My senior season of track did not go as well as I thought it would. My grades had dropped a little, but I managed to graduate. And so I said, you know what? I graduated. Maybe I can make something of myself. I need to leave Memphis. There was so much trauma associated with Memphis for me that I said, I can't be here anymore. Where can I go? I didn't want to go to Atlanta because in that time I was fighting being gay. And I was like, well, what's the next biggest city that I can go that's not Atlanta? And it was Dallas. And so oddly enough, I started to apply for jobs. And I was like, well, I can get a job. Maybe I can retake my MCAT, retake some courses, and potentially make some connections to go to UT Southwestern to be a physician. And so I ended up getting a job at UT Southwestern in research. Because when I graduated, I had 2 bachelors, one in biology and one in exercise science. And so it was in research, and it was through UT Southwestern Temps. And so, but I did not know which research department I was going to. And so what I did was that I got the job, took the interview, was excited, packed up everything that I own into my 2002 Toyota Corolla, found an apartment online, got my own apartment, and moved. And on the first day of my job, I found out that the research that I'll be working in was HIV research, collecting data for the National HIV Behavior Surveillance. And the first thing I said was, oh. The thing that I was running from in Memphis, I ran right to in Dallas as I was trying to start my life over. And so I had all these bills, so I had to work. And so what I was doing with the NHBS study is that I was collecting qualitative data, so collecting the stories of people all across Dallas who were at risk of HIV. So people who inject drugs, high-risk heterosexuals, queer folk on the strip on Cedar Springs in a big mobile testing unit. And through that process, I heard the stories of so many people who were living with HIV, who were leading and thriving in their life. And I told myself, I said, you know what, if they can do it, I can do it too. So through my work, I found this sense of joy, but also I found this sense of hope and passion that inspired me to do what I need to do for my health to live. Because for a long time, I didn't want it to live. I did not want to live. And as I started to do more work, I started to fall in love with the work. And you know how in your mind, sometimes you want to do something, but then when you realize it's something else and everything just starts to align, the dominoes just start to line up for me and things just start to happen. I went from being a part-time, temporary data collector to being the field supervisor over the program to getting picked up by another larger nonprofit that was based in Scotts Valley, California, to where I was developing culturally appropriate education around sex and health for youth, and then left there and worked in pharma, where I was funding organizations that did sexual and reproductive health. And then now leading programs here in Dallas and traveling around the nation, training people living with HIV on how to be leaders in their own community, to create and inspire other leaders, and going in front of audiences and talking about my narrative. And who would have ever thought that a problem that I was dealing with in my life, which was my status, could have turned into purpose, which yielded passion, and allowed me to lead in my own life with an internal power. For so long, I chose not to listen to myself. But when I started to listen to myself and listen to the needs of my community, that's when I really started to define what my leadership looks like. Listen. Now I sit in a space to where I'm not only creating programs, but I'm connecting resources. So each and every day, I have the privilege to connect with people, to hear about what they need, to understand the issues in their lives that they face, find those resources for them, and empower them to be authentically themselves in a way that no one allowed me to be authentically me. And so when I talk about leadership, I talk about it from a place of listening. First to oneself, to hold yourself accountable to the leadership qualities that you hold, but also to listen to those folk that you are leading, to those folk that are looking at you. And then from listening, leading with empathy, understanding the narratives of people are different, and understanding the value that they have in their experience. Leadership is such a dynamic process. It's not a buzzword for me. Also, it's something that I don't view as a career because it's my lifestyle. Everybody in this room has an essence of a leader because you chose to be in this space to connect intimately on your own time. That's an element of leadership because you're choosing to listen with empathy. And so, as I move forward in the work that I do, each and every day, I go to work with a smile because I know that the work that I'm doing is bigger than myself. It's about my community. It's for every young queer person in the world that was told that you will be nothing. You will not achieve. You have to live life in this box if this is you. I was able to take my journey and turn it into something limitless. When people talk about glass ceilings, I tell people, a glass ceiling is something that you create. Because if you aim for the moon, you will land amongst the stars. And when we think about leadership, it's not based off of time spent, nor is it predicated on age. It's about the experience that you have and how you leverage and offer that experience to impact others. Thank you.
Hello. We're now going to introduce our final panelist. Her name is Haley Ablong, and she is an attorney with Carrington and Pullman here in Dallas.
Hi everyone, my name is Haley. I'm feeling a little intimidated, honestly, because I'm standing looking out at a group of people who I would love to listen to you guys talk, and I'm following these two impossible acts, which is kind of unfair. So I'm going to do my best to do it justice. I'm going to start and tell you a little bit about who I am, tell you my story, tell you what my experience has been like coming to Dallas as an attorney and as a queer woman, and then end with where I hope the future goes and what it looks like, right? So for me, I grew up in Dallas. I went to private school, and I always knew I was a little different, but I didn't know why. I just didn't, there was something about me that just wasn't the same. But I am a millennial. I grew up, I graduated high school in 2014, which means I would have been the very tail end of millennials to be in high school before Obergefell came through, if that makes sense. So when I was in high school, I lived with this narrative that being gay wasn't an option, or if it wasn't, I didn't know what that meant in terms of the future. So I repressed it, probably like most of us in this room. But I didn't think that being gay was something that would ever be in my future. In fact, I thought it would take it to my grave. And I didn't know that was an option for me. As a matter of fact, when Obergefell passed, I remember exactly where I was. I was in that summer studying for the LSAT, sitting in my dad's office working at the receptionist desk, and I remember looking at the TV and thinking that would never apply to me. And then here I am, fast forward with my beautiful fiance in the audience, right? So, but I say that to point out that I'm kind of at this crossroads where I remember what it was like growing up thinking that having a marriage that was legally recognized was not going to be an option for me if I, was to be my truest self. Yet, I also kind of am among this new generation of people where it's woohoo, rah-rah, win-win, where it's so normalized now. But that was not, so I'm among that community, but that was not my high school experience. So I guess I'll set that. So when I went off to college, I went to UT in Austin. And I studied something called Plan 2. I was pre-med, I loved it, I was in a sorority, let it be said, I was not among a queer community. Again, did not think that was an option for me. And then senior year hit, and I remember that I had fought it, and then a friend of mine introduced me to someone, and I was like, uh-oh, what is this feeling? And I remember, what was I watching? I think I was watching the show with like the prison with all the lesbians in it. I remember, yeah, there we go. Where's Buck? And I remember telling my friend, oh no, I think I'm gay. And she was like, stop watching the show. I was like, that's not gonna fix my problem. And so eventually, long story short, I go out with a woman and I was like, oh dear, here we are. So that was like the week before Thanksgiving. I came home, mind you, I'm a senior in college. I told my parents, I said, long story short, I'm dating a girl, and they were like, what does that mean? I was like, I don't know, and they were like, all right, what are we having for dinner? So I am an anomaly in that I grew up in a family that, it didn't change anything. I was accepted, I didn't have to worry about losing my family. As a matter of fact, when I was younger, I remember my parents explicitly telling us, we don't care who you love, We don't care what you do, we will always love you. And that, I think, is so unusual, to just have parents that from such a young age, before anything ever came about, were so affirming. I never, ever, ever had to worry about if I came out, would I lose my family? And yet, I was so far in the closet. I was hiding. I was, repressing it in every way possible. And so I had it so easy, and yet it still felt so hard. So when I came out my senior year, I had applied to law school, I got into law school, I knew I was gonna be staying in Austin. So the summer, I had to find a job. And so I decided I remember sitting in history class and I Googled gay organizations Texas, and this thing called Equality Texas came up. And I was like, great, that's the one. So I knew nothing about it, I knew no one who worked there, I just decided that's where I was gonna go and I was gonna find a way to get an internship. And I don't remember ultimately how it happened, but I emailed so many people, I cold called so many people, I went and found professors and said, do you know somebody? You do know somebody. Can you help me find a way to work at Equality Texas, because I want to do something gay, something meaningful, and I want to make my community. And so there I was, interning for Equality Texas in the summer, going into my first year of law school, and it was a blast. I met the most wonderful people, I did really cool work, and I had only scratched the surface of this whole world, this whole community. So law school starts, I go through law school, I do my thing, I find my community, and then COVID hits my second year of law school. So all of a sudden everything went pass fail, everything went remote, and the whole world changed overnight. So I had decided that my plan was to take 2 semesters at once, basically, of law school. I was gonna take the bar early, and then, because I saw a path to taking the bar early and then having that stress off of my back a few months before my peers. So I said, great, that's what I'm gonna do. So that summer, going into my 3rd year of law school, I worked, and then I also did classes, put me ahead, I got to take the bar early, but then it put me in a situation where during my 3rd year of law school, I took the bar in February, but I literally would not get my diploma until May. So I had a dilemma. I could not work as a lawyer yet. I literally had not graduated from law school. So I decided it was gonna be my passion project. And I decided my passion project was gonna be this thing called Land Illegal. So then I set out on this journey. I didn't know anyone there, I didn't know anyone that worked there, but I was gonna figure that out too. So I started applying, and I got an interview. I remember I was so excited. And I interviewed with someone named Shelly Skeen, who I'm sure many of y'all know. And sweet Shelly took me under her wing. It was the most rewarding internship, y'all. To have someone that you get to talk to on a daily basis, that makes you feel loved, makes you feel welcomed, makes you feel seen, and to have someone like, oh my God, I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to have the impact on people that she has. And to be able to see how one woman somehow supports and does so many things for so many people was such an inspiring experience. So there I was, I had met Shelly, I had met not only a friend, but a mentor, a role model, and from there I then graduated from law school, I started practicing law, but I kept this yearning to stay involved in the community. I didn't know what that looked like, right? So working as a full-time lawyer, I was doing personal injury work, but on the weekends I was playing in gay sports leagues, I was going to check happy hours, I was doing anything and everything I could to find community in Dallas. And I was lucky. I was welcomed with open arms. I found friends everywhere I went. I made friends everywhere I went. I found this booming community, which is in large part because of a lot of the people in this room, I had Sue Ellens that I could go to. I had leagues I could go to. I had black tie that I could go to. There were so many opportunities for me to just strut into a room because of the communities and the spaces that had been created by other people in the community that came out of me. And so that's kind of how we got to where we are now, right? So now the question is, what does the future look like going forward? And the answer is, I don't really know. But the prompt I was asked to speak about is to talk about my experience getting involved in the LGBT community. And I think the answer is I'm actually just starting. I think that there's so much ahead, there's so many spaces and so many tables I want to be at. For me now, I work as an attorney. I'm in my 5th year. I work at Carrington Coleman. I work in a place where I can put a picture of my fiance and I on the desk and know I'm bats an eye. I work in a place where I can talk to clients and I can mention my fiance. I can use the pronouns she and her. And I'm mindful, right? Because when you're at work, it's about the client. It's not about me and my story. But I don't worry about getting fired for being who I am or who I love. I can bring my fiance to work events. And that wasn't the case. I was actually talking with some people earlier today talking about The idea of having to go to your career every day with the fear that if you are who you are, you'd be fired, that to me, I cannot even fathom that. I cannot even fathom that being a fear, a concern, a reality, a possibility. That's so far beyond my comfort zone. And I hope to God that in a few years down the road, I'm talking to someone else, that they're looking at me and saying they can't imagine something was my reality. Whether that something is being wondering of, gosh, will Obergefell ever be overturned? Or whether it's, oh my gosh, what does family look like? I hope to God that things continue to grow in a way where one day I'm the one saying, can you imagine this being reality, right? So I look forward to being a part of moving things in that direction, continuing to push things ahead. Right now I'm getting my MBA on the side, as it's my other pet hobby right now, because apparently I can't sit still. And I'm the vice president of the Dallas Association of Young Lawyers, and I was for a while on the board of the Dallas LGBT Bar Association. So long story short, I'm gonna find my way to tables, and my mission is to make sure that someone in our community is always at every one of those tables. So thank you to the Dallas Way for doing everything to preserve this history. It's so special, it's so important, and I am the example of a beneficiary of all of the wonderful communities, time, energy, love, support that all of you have poured in. So thank you for making communities that I could walk into, and that I can continue to walk into, and that I can continue to bring people into. So, thank you.
Yeah, so you're asking about after an HIV diagnosis, at what point people kind of gain that confidence back or stop letting it define them in a way that's negative, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think Chris probably is pretty well equipped to answer that one.
So what I can say is that everybody's a bit different, but for me, it was where I decided to not let my status define me and say that it's a part of me. It lives with me, I don't live with it. But also, my status, you put me in a unique position to reach other people, to prevent them from having to go through some of the things that I went through. And then also to inspire those folk who are living with, like myself, to say, you can do it. Because not only do I do advocacy work and public health focused work, but I also model. I'm also a leader in the local barroom community. I also do a lot of social media work. And I'm very upfront and honest about my status because I think representation matters. Because the world will tell you that HIV has to be the end of your life. But if I can represent the counter narrative and showcase that HIV don't stop nothing, and it's just another part of me, like the color of my skin or this pink shirt on my back. And so I tell people who are newly diagnosed or people who are long-term survivors, when you think about your status, just think of it as a piece of your identity, if you want to do it that way. It does not make you, it does not define you, it does not limit you because you are limitless.
So my friend and a friend of many of us in the room, Ed Oakley, who's a former openly gay member of the Dallas City Council, and the first and only person who ran as an openly gay candidate for mayor of the city of Dallas, talked to us after our last outrageous oral. We were talking about the idea for tonight, and all of that was brewing a bit, the theme and all that. And Ed said that he was wanting to make a substantial donation to the Dallas Way, and that what he was going to do was to give us $1,000 for every person under 29, or under 30, so 29 counts, if you're 29 you count, under 30, who attended our next event, and this is that next event. So Ed, the official count is 19 people in the room are under the age of 30, so that's not me or you.
See, does that count as two?
Well, then you're going to have to pay a lot of money because a lot of us could do that. So 19 people. Thank you for your generosity. Say whatever you want to say.
Well, it occurred to me, having been to most of these events since 2011 when I'm in town, I see the same folks. We've gotten older. We've all been involved in the organizations. We've all been involved in the AIDS crisis. I helped build these clubs on Cedar Springs and help preserve them with Mr. Avalon, who's going to eventually keep. It was just important to me, and it realized that where are the young people? We know this history, and we're preserving it in legacy, but where are the next generation to take it to the and listen to some of the stories that we have to tell? So this is probably the largest donation I've ever made to an organization like this, but I believe in it, and I believe in what Steve did. Did you go to Molina High School? I was going to say, you lived in Oak Cliff, I just knew you had to go to Molina High School. Because I was probably your council person.
My parents went to Sunset, and they're like,
Oh, Sunset.
Dallas, I used to go to Grandparents.
Okay, so I'll go, I brought my check printer and I brought my checkbook, so I'll write it. I'll round it out to 20,000.